From the headquarters of Telesur English in Quito, Ecuador, I am Estefania Bravo, and this is From the South. Far-right presidential candidate Jair Bolsonaro has attended the first public event since the first round of election took place in Brazil. Bolsonaro attended a news conference in Rio de Janeiro after a meeting with his social liberal party. Talking to the press, he has promised to unify the country if he wins in the runoff. However, in the past, Bolsonaro has made comments demeaning women and the black community.
We will unite Brazil, white and black, gays and heteros, fathers and sons, north and south, men and women. We'll unite our Brazil and pacify it.
A famous capoeira master has been buried in Brazil after he was killed by supporters of Bolsonaro. Moa do Catende was stabbed to death after a public forum where he expressed his support for the Workers' Party candidate Fernando Haddad. Several cases of violence against left-wing voters were reported after the first round of the presidential election. Several artists announced the barbarity of this murder.
We cannot reduce Brazil to this barbaric thing. The murder of Moa do Catende is a sign that one shouldn't forcefully follow in the way that other people blindly think. It is backwards. It is fear of responsibility in civilization.
And meanwhile, thousands of protesters have marched down Sao Paulo's iconic Paulista Avenue against dictatorship and fascism. The marchers rejected the first-round victory of Bolsonaro in the presidential election. They are calling for all democratic and progressive forces to unite to defeat Bolsonaro in the second round on October 28th. Bolsonaro's medical team has announced that he is still not healthy enough to take part in scheduled TV debates and other campaign activities. The far-right candidate has repeatedly missed the television debates. But presidential candidate Fernando Haddad has told journalists that he is even willing to debate his opponent in the hospital if necessary, hinting that Bolsonaro may be intentionally avoiding open discussion.
Our fear is that he uses ruses to avoid debate. I'm prepared even to go to a hospital room to debate him. If that's what it takes, I will go to the sick room so that we can debate Brazil.
Another social leader has been killed in Colombia, this time in the Putumayo region. The leader of a farming association, Otto Valenzuela, was shot dead, allegedly in his home. His murder was reported immediately, but police authorities said they couldn't reach the area. 4 social leaders and 3 indigenous leaders have been murdered in less than 48 hours. Our correspondent, Paola Fernandez, tells us more.
Killings of social leaders continue in Colombia. 170 leaders have been murdered since the beginning of 2018. The last case has been reported in the department of Putumayo, where campesino leader Otto Valenzuela has been killed. He was a pioneer in the promotion of the replacement of illicit crops. There is outrage in the area since they say the community called authorities and they were told there were no police forces to come so far away. The victim was also a relevant figure in the organization of the community to fight for their rights. The UNCHR mission in Colombia has urged the government to take measures to protect social leaders in the country.
We thank Paola Fernandez for that report, and farmers are supporting the Integral National Program of Substitution of Illicit Crops. However, it seems the program could be at risk of being implemented.
Close to 80,000 families, part of the Integral National Program of Substitution of Illicit Crops, are facing uncertainty. They say the government of Iván Duque hasn't paid attention to the program.
With
the previous government, we discussed about the volunteer eradication of illicit crops by implementing the program in different departments and municipalities of the country. Since then, we have been in standby. We haven't had any conversation with the new government.
Former President Juan Manuel Santos said that the budget for this program was approved, but reality seems to be other.
For 2019, we need a budget of 2.5 billion Colombian pesos, but the government is assigning a small budget for this and also for the integral agricultural reform. We will need an additional amount for a land fund, but it is not planned yet.
Experts say the success of the substitution program is based on the amount of public funds. According to analyst Juan Carlos Garzón, it is difficult that this government will change their way of fighting drug trafficking.
In Colombia, people talk about drug policies, but the country does not really have one. We have a bunch of tools used independently. It will be a real challenge to create policies that work in the coming years.
Meanwhile, social organizations have reported 43 leaders working on the substitution of illicit crops program have been killed.
At least 12 people have died in landslides in the center of Colombia. Another 4 people have been injured in Marquetalia municipality. The landslides were a consequence of heavy rains that have raised the area for the past 3 weeks. The third most powerful storm ever to hit the U.S., Hurricane Michael, has been downgraded to a tropical storm after causing havoc in the Florida Panhandle. When Michael made landfall, it had winds of 250 kilometers per hour, which have since been reduced to 110. At least 2 people have been killed in the storm. A state of emergency was declared in Florida, Alabama, and Georgia. The authorities have urged residents to prepare for heavy rains, as Storm Michael is expected to intensify again over the weekend. We'll be back very soon. Stay with us. Welcome back. Venezuela's foreign minister has criticized what he called interference in his country by the German Chancellor Angela Merkel. After meeting the Chilean president on Wednesday, Merkel offered German support for a regional initiative on Venezuela. In a series of tweets, Jorge Arreaza lamented the German leader's subordination to the Trump administration and its desire to impose a blockade on Venezuela. He demanded that the government respect Venezuela's sovereignty. If Germany wants to help, he added, it should use its influence to help lift the economic measures against the Venezuelan people. Police has intervened in Peru to prevent clashes between pro and anti-Keiko Fujimori supporters. Both rallies gathered outside the police station where the leader of the Popular Force and daughter of former President Alberto Fujimori is being detained. Keiko has been arrested for alleged money laundering involving the Brazilian construction giant Odebrecht.
First her father, and now her. What's next? The Fujimoris are here defending her. The whole Fujimori's family is here to show support because Keiko is not alone.
Fujimorism represents the corruption in the country. It represents influence in the institutions, and it does not represent democracy in essence.
Keiko Fujimori has published a letter to protest her innocence after being arrested. The leader of the Popular Force says she was arrested without any evidence. She condemned the political persecution of her and her party as well. Our correspondent in Lima, Jaime Herrera, has the latest on Keiko's arrest.
Several reactions have come after the arrest of Keiko Fujimori in the letter she published in social media addressing what happened. In the letter, she said her arrest is due to political revenge and persecution to her political party. However, different judges and political analysts think that there is enough evidence to point her as the leader of a criminal network. This is supported by the public prosecutor Jose Domingo Perez and his investigation. The investigations show Keiko would have organized a complete system to take illicit resources to finance her political campaign during the presidential election. Keiko remains in detention in the police headquarters.
We thank Jaime Herrera for that report. The construction of a new international airport in Mexico City has been the focus of community protests for years. Now, members of the transition team for the president-elect Andrés Manuel López Obrador have been to listen to the affected residents.
The green landscape that surrounds the community of San Nicolás Tlaminca has not been the same for the last 2 years. The company that is building the capital's new international airport has turned the region into a landfill of toxic waste.
We are in a natural protected area of nearly 8,000 hectares. It was created in 2002, and it was clearly stated that in this area there should be no garbage dumps or mines.
y está claramente en el decreto.
People in the surrounding communities made clear to the transition team that they are opposed to this project. They said it has only brought devastation.
¡Lago sí! ¡Aeropuerto no! ¡Lago sí! ¡Aeropuerto no!
Mines and quarries, many of them illegal, has caused irreversible damage to the environment. It has destroyed flora and fauna endemic to this central region of the country.
The environmental impact study for the airport said there will be 16 mines, but in the reality there are more than 160 authorized mines, plus all the illegal ones.
President-elect Andrés Manuel López Obrador promised to listen to all the parties involved in the building of the airport, a project which has already cost more than $13 billion.
They tell me there is no provision for an inquiry in the law. No, there isn't. But if you ask my opinion, I would like to have an inquiry.
The local communities have stood firm in saying that suspending construction is the only way out of this conflict, which could mar the government of López Obrador from the start.
This project is causing a catastrophe, not only for the environment, but also for us, because the people who live here are not taken into account in this project, except as cheap labor.
Businessmen, on the other hand, are defending what they say will be a pole of development for the country. As well as the airport itself, they are planning a network of toll roads connecting it with the Mexican capital, as well as hotels and shopping centers.
And still in Mexico, people are protesting against the purchasing of a building of traditional restaurants to be replaced by a co-working center. Our correspondent in Mexico City, Pablo Perez, tells us more.
We're standing in front of the emblematic sandwich factory named Tortas Robles in downtown Mexico City. This eatery has been serving Mexican tortas to the citizens of downtown Mexico City for over 70 years. They're gonna lose their job very soon, along with the workers of the Café Trevi and El Café del Medio. Those are traditional downtown eateries that have been serving the people of Mexico for a long time, but a bank-owned company bought the building, and they're gonna evict them soon to build a co-working center, and they're gonna substitute the traditional restaurants with international chain fast food companies. So that's why citizens of Mexico City are demonstrating today against what they call a corruption between the building companies and the Mexico City's government that is allowing these evictions to be carried away, but also the erasure, the erasing of Mexico City's history, well, and they say it's just for profit.
That was Pablo Perez from Mexico City. Bolivia's President Evo Morales has announced workers will receive a double bonus. Morales said economic growth can guarantee the double bonus that will be paid to public and private workers. The bonus is called Effort for Bolivia, a recognition to Bolivian workers. And with just a few days to go until the Vatican declares Monsignor Oscar Romero a saint, social movements in El Salvador are demanding justice for his murder in 1980. They want those responsible to be brought to trial.
The Catholic faithful in El Salvador, along with human rights organizations, unions and citizens in general, are demanding that a judge in the capital speed up the criminal case against the murderers of Monsignor Romero.
We haven't been able to move forward with the case. We have talked to the judge about this, and he told us he has too much work.
Monsignor Romero was killed on March 24, 1980, as he celebrated Mass in the Church of Divine Providence in San Salvador. A truth commission set up under the peace agreements attributed the murder to death squads commanded by the now deceased Army Major Roberto D'Aubuisson.
There is an absence of justice for 38 years. The state has neglected the victims of the armed conflict. And I say victims because Romero is the first of those victims of the savage repression carried out in the 70s and 80s.
3 days ahead of his canonization by Pope Francis in the Vatican, the plaintiffs say the sanctity of Romero will not be complete until those who took part in his murder are brought to justice.
The judge should issue a formal request for Interpol to locate and deport Captain Álvaro Saravia. That is one of the demands being made. Another is to take steps to reconstruct the crime in which Monsignor Romero was killed.
Although there is joy at the canonization of Monsignor Romero on October 14th, the impunity enjoyed by his murderers leaves an unpaid debt of justice and reparations.
The Dominican Republic and the European Union have strengthened ties during a meeting in Santo Domingo. Dominican Foreign Minister Miguel Vargas and the Latin American and Caribbean External Action Director Hugo Sobral presided the forum. They stressed the relevance of cooperation between the two regions. During the meeting, they examined topics such as human rights plan, political parties law, and funds negotiations. Colombia has recovered 38 ancient artifacts. This pre-Columbian ceramic pottery were plundered over a decade ago by a private collector in the U.S. The FBI recovered the artifacts that were illegally trafficked. The Colombian Institute of Anthropology and History will try to identify the pieces. We'll be back very soon. Stay with us. Welcome back. At least 11 people have died after a bus and a truck crashed in Russia. Emergency authorities have said other 7 people are injured. Emergency services were rapidly dispatched to the site to rescue some passengers who were trapped in the bus. Early investigations suggest that the truck drove into the opposite lane and collided with the bus. Syrian Kurdish forces say they are holding 900 foreign Islamic State fighters. They say the number of foreign jihadis detained has sharply increased.
They
joined a terrorist organization which is carrying out terrorist acts around the world, in the Middle East, Europe and the United States, Asia, everywhere in the world. So in northern Syria, we are confronting an international problem. They must be judged in northern Syria, and then each state must take care of its terrorists, taking into account the international laws and rules recognized by the UN.
And fishermen in the Gaza Strip are struggling as Israel has reduced their fishing zone. Israeli forces have reduced the fishing zone in 3 miles. Authorities said the decision followed Palestinians' attempts to harm police forces across the border. Traders in Gaza's fish market say prices have risen because supply of fish cannot meet the demand of 2 million people living in the enclave. A court in New York City has dropped part of a sexual assault case against producer Harvey Weinstein. The decision comes after Lucia Evans accused Weinstein of forcing her to perform oral sex when she was 21. Evans' lawyer said the court's decision shows a mishandling of the case. She was one of the first women who spoke out against Weinstein, inspiring the Me Too movement.
Over 80 women have accused Harvey Weinstein of sexual violence. And if our justice system fails to hold him criminally accountable, then something is wrong with our justice system. The problem is with the system. It's not with the accusations, it's not with the accusers.
Thousands of sculptors are putting finishing touches to idols for the upcoming Hindu festival of Durga Puja. The sculptures of goddess Durga will be central to the celebrations. The profession has long been male-dominated, but some women idol makers are defying the tradition. Modern art and antiquities are blending in a new museum in Lebanon. A contemporary sculpture of a mortar missile is displayed alongside millennia-old statues. The exhibition includes 60 contemporary art pieces and around 400 antiquities from Lebanon, Iraq, Syria, Egypt, and Yemen. The museum's founders wanted to beacon of hope in a region overshadowed by jihadism. And with that story, we've come to the end of this news brief. These and other stories, as always, find them on our website at telesurtv.net/English. And also join us on social media, on Facebook, on Twitter, and on Instagram. For Telesur English, I am Stefania Bravo. Thank you for watching.
Telesur brings you a special